Isn't that nice?
Last year's freshman class.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I love the vice learning. I just am so excited to build a relationship with the kids that came in, and I don't teach them, and I'm just really excited to feel like a second mom. I'm just really pumped about that.
We had a good time, didn't we, Miss Murphy? We had ninth graders, and they were ninth graders for real, and they were so adorable. They asked such funny questions, and were very intrigued by us telling them 2 truths and a lie, so they like that too. Yeah. You're doing it on Friday. Good stuff. All right, so I'm going to give it to Miss Murphy to talk about 504.
All right, raise your hand if you have received a 504 plan from me this year. That should be more hands. Yeah, at least half of you guys have. Many of you have already been in a meeting, and so I do want to make everyone on the faculty aware of how 504 works and what the expectations are, because this is a legally binding issue. 504 and special ed can sometimes be confused with one another, and there are areas where they overlap. On the visual up here, you see the IDEA, special ed, that falls into the very center of the chestnut of students, and 504 is just outside that. It's similar in that it deals with disabilities. Special ed is much more specific. Am I hitting the right button? Because I can't really see. Special ed is more specific. It receives federal funding. 504 does not. 504 addresses disabilities or perceived disabilities and requires us to level the playing field so that that student has the same access to their education as a non-disabled peer. So whereas special ed has categories such as emotional behavior disorder, other health impairment, specific learning disability, 504 can be many, many things, and the determination is, do they have a disability, something that majorly, substantially interferes with a major life function. There's no specific categories. So in terms of legal definition, we cannot exclude or deny benefits or discriminate against any individual who has a disability. That wouldn't be nice anyway. All right, so now 504, it's a little tricky in what defines a disability. It can be a physical, mental impairment which does substantially limit one or more major life functions. It can be a record of such an impairment. They've had it previously and we know of it, and it still goes on. Or it could be environmental, that this person has been treated as though they do, and so in effect being regarded as such entitles them to 504. All right, here's some of the physiological and mental or psychological disorders which could qualify a student for 504. The first meetings we've done, if you've been in one so far, I've knocked out all the ones doing the type 1 diabetes and the seizures. They're real high-end medical things that you need to be able to leap into action. And it goes, from that to students with ADD, many, many different kinds of disabilities represented. Okay, so if they have a record of such an impairment, maybe they've been misclassified, but we've always treated them as though they're deaf. I don't know. I don't have any experience with that type of one. But if they have always been treated as such, then they qualify. Okay, here's one when we're doing our eligibility. If we get a new student in and we're going to do an eligibility meeting, sometimes we get hung up on the phrase substantially limits. The disability substantially limits a major life functioning. And, a student might be distractible or they fidget a lot, but you're looking at them compared to their same age peers. It's not a matter of does it occasionally interfere with their education and their performance, but does it substantially interfere? We're not doing this to help them reach their potential, to make sure they get Hope Scholarship, to keep them in all A's. It is to prevent them from being discriminated against in terms of having access to a free and appropriate education. So some major life activities or body functions that might Come up here would be, things like, well, look at the bottom there, concentrating, standing. I feel that today. The ability to learn, or if a student has body function ones, that would be your type 1 diabetes, kids with really bad asthma, that kind of thing. Okay, so we're trying to level the playing field by mitigating the effects of the disability. We're not trying to give anybody an advantage or help them maximize potential. Sometimes parents will come in and they'll have a laundry list of accommodations they'd like, and they're not necessarily related to the disability and the education. So we have to consider that because it's a team effort. So if we're evaluating, now the vast majority by high school, we know that there's a disability there. We're evaluating annually. Occasionally, we do get new students or somebody who comes up with a condition that requires we evaluate. Then, if they're found eligible, we determine, do they require accommodations, yes or no? I've done a couple recently where, yes, they're eligible, but they require no accommodations. We just follow an individualized health plan. If they do require accommodations to mitigate the effects of the disability, we develop a plan as a team, implement the plan, and then at least once a year go ahead and reevaluate it and make sure that's what's right, because it changes from year to year for some kids what they're going to need. Some possible things, if we've got a student who needs a referral, sometimes it's a temporary 504. It could be something like last year we had somebody who broke both hands, so we had to put in some accommodations. It could be a student who's pregnant and needs some accommodations for the time being. If you suddenly saw somebody whose grades were dropping, who'd really, gone around the bend and had a bunch of behavior referrals, and it wasn't just a home situation. There could be a mental issue that we needed to address. If a student is hospitalized in, a psychiatric way, then we always do a 504 eligibility when they return to school. All right. Let's see. Some things to consider. Okay, so when we do the evaluation process, some of the things I might ask for is performance in your classroom, behavior referrals, the parent or guardian will often have a lot to say. And if we have medical information, we take it into account. We do not require them to bring in the diagnosis for ADD or what have you in order to qualify them when we're talking about 504. Something to keep in mind that they will be, we might consider they have a disability even when they're taking something or using something that mitigates the disability. So if a student has ADD and they're on, Concerta, even though they're fine when they take their medication, that doesn't mean they don't have a disability and that we shouldn't have accommodations in place. And we do this, we consider it when the condition is active. So if a parent is concerned that something might happen, that the student might become stressed out and given more anxiety, we can't take that into consideration for the planning. We've got to use just what is actively happening. Okay. A big thing we have to be aware of is, how does the disability impact school? Where are these things crossing? Because what we're trying to do is level that school playing field, and that's for all areas. Like, I've been checking on which coaches, for instance, have diabetes training, and making sure that there's always going to be somebody who's diabetes trained when we have these students who are running cross country or trying out for basketball, so on. Because we cannot exclude them simply because they have a disability. All right. So things we do want to do is document everything. I take notes in the computer. That stays in IC. I send you guys a copy of the plan. So we document how the disability impacts their major life activity. And what we don't want to do is, in determining this, focus on the symptoms instead of the cause. Well, he's never hyper in my class, or this. It's what is causing it. Symptoms help us decide what we need to do, but you look at the disability. All right. We develop the plan, it's individualized, and we do it together to alleviate the impact of the disability. Again, this is not to maximize potential or make sure they get A's. All right, year to year, things may change. I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've seen a number of students as they progress from freshman to senior. Some of this training wheels come off, and they become better advocates for themselves, and they don't need every accommodation they had the previous year. So that's not always the case, but sometimes it is. If a student has an IEP, they're not under 504, even with medical issues. The IEP supersedes the 504. One thing in terms of making accommodations, we want to be very specific, but not necessarily name a teacher. Because if you put into a plan that that student will go to Dr. Colley for a cooling off period, and Dr. Colley isn't here that day, or the next year the plan's still in effect and she's moved somewhere, then we have an issue with the accommodations. If you ever have a question, I'm sure it's fine. If you ever have a question about a student, please ask, and if they have a 504 and you're not sure, or you're wondering if they do, or you think they need a referral, please ask, and let's take care of that. Okay, so here's a scenario. During her freshman and sophomore years, Sarah was a straight-A student. She was class president and rarely got in trouble. At the beginning of her junior year, Sarah was in a serious car accident. After taking the week off, she returned to school with a broken leg and had bruises on her face and body. Since her accident, Sarah's friends and teachers have noticed that her attitude and behavior have changed. She seems angry all the time and rarely turns in her homework. Okay, she starts failing classes. What should the school do? This is obviously a case for, we would jump in, hopefully, and make a determination. Is there, something that maybe we didn't know from the parent that has happened here that we need to be aware of for, educational purposes? Kind of help her through that. We get a lot of concussion ones, I have noticed recently. Okay, so we would, kind of keep track of her behavior issues, her academic issues, and maybe do an eligibility, possibly write a plan for Sarah. We don't wait for the parents to ask for it. When we see a need, it's our responsibility to evaluate and, if appropriate, create a plan for a student. This one I really like. This happens all the time. Emma is a fourth grader who has ADHD. 504 team determined that she's eligible, and at the meeting, Emma's dad presents a note from the doctor, and the doctor includes 35 separate accommodations that the doctor believes she needs, and the dad wants all of them in the plan. You can't write a prescription for special ed or for 504. They can make suggestions, but the doctor will often just check off everything, including things that we cannot do regarding state testing, and it's a team decision, just like it is with an IEP. All right, you've got to relate each accommodation you make to the educational impact the disability has. All right, so we will consider the doctor and the parents' recommendations, but determine as a team. All right, it's not a checklist that you just do everything just to be safe, because then we're legally bound to do it, and it may not be something that is caused by the disability. And again, if you guys have concerns about a student or questions about somebody's plan, please let me know. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, everybody should have the cheat sheet. If you are brand new to the building, you've already heard this probably 3 or 4 times. So we have 2 teacher evaluation processes. If you're 0 to 3, you're under the full implementation, meaning you have 4 walkthroughs, 2 formatives, yada, yada, yada. If you're like myself, we've been doing this a long time, then you have 2 walkthroughs, 2 formatives, 1 announced and 1 unannounced. But we have the subject, if we see something We can go in at any time and ask for documentation and all those kind of things. One thing on here, the data sources. Under flexible, you don't have walkthroughs. I put same as full TAPS data sources, but under the flexible plan, you don't have the 4 walkthroughs that a full person would have. So if you've been teaching 0 to 3 years, and it kind of gives you the scenario 0 to 3 years, induction, teaching out of field, new position, out of profession for a long period of time, moving into the state, evaluation, performance, needs development, or effective, then you're on the full TAPS process. So if you have a question about the full TAPS process, or if you don't know if you're on the full TAPS process or not, I guess you can speak to myself, Ms. Murphy, Mr. Hope, and Mr. Gino. One new thing this year, there are no slows. There are no slows. And 2, there are no student surveys. So as a result of the student surveys, they threw a knuckleball. We have what is called professional growth, which is 20% of the evaluation. So everybody in this room, and we'll talk about that in a second, will have the opportunity to create professional growth goals, or we'll help you hint towards that. We'll give you some suggestions toward professional growth and walk you through all that. We do have a roster verification on August 31st, and that's basically all the people sitting in front of you in your grade book. You go in IC, click yes, then submit, and that kind of thing. And also new to TEKS is a 90% attendance rule. Students have to be in your class 90% of the time for them to count towards your TIM score. And I think that's roughly like 18 days per class. Yeah, something like 18 days or something like that. So if you know of people who are not here, when we get to that point of counting the TIM score and the SGP and all that, you kind of may want to make a note to make sure we don't count that person who may not do well on the end of course or milestone testing and all that kind of stuff. You have to have all your self-assessment and orientation things done by August 31st. So if you don't know how to log into TEKS, it's your certificate number plus 675, and I think it's your last 4 of your social. Yeah. And you got to go change that because I know everybody's logged in now. I can go and change. But anyway. So this is on the OneNote. The long PowerPoint from the district is on there. And make sure you look at the frequently asked questions because it talks about how they calculate your SGP. And the SGP is calculated, correct me if I'm wrong, English and math. English and math this year. So they don't throw everybody in the bucket like they did in the past. You don't take slows and all that. So the SGP is calculated via English and math. And a lot of this is left up to the district. So we may have a great thing this year. Next year we may have slow student surveys and all that stuff. So we're crossing our fingers and all that kind of stuff. So Dr. Shepard, we want to talk about the goals.
So it's...
Oh, yes.
All right, so what Mr. Reynolds said is true. It is a hold harmless year. So they said if we don't have to do these things, we don't want to. So hopefully the state won't come back at us for that. Talking about the 20% growth, that's when you develop your own professional development plan to go into the TEKS platform. So this is going to do away with those credit hours you used to have to go pay for or go during the summer, and how many people know what I'm talking about? So if you've been around for a while, we used to have to get 10 credit hours every 5 years or however long it was. And that has gone away. So for the last few years, we've been just, they haven't figured out how to do this, so they finally figured it out. So what we've done is we've created some professional learning goals that you could use. You don't have to use them. Kimberly's going to talk about those. But I think it's very helpful to get a goal that makes sense for the school and for you as well. So I'm going to give that to Dr. Shepard.
Okay, so what we've got is Dr. Colley and I created some SMART goals based on our school improvement plan. They are completely from that, and what we looked at was some of the areas that they were kind of requiring. We also tried to make sure that it wasn't a lot of extra things that we needed to add to. We wanted to do a book study this year as part of the design team and as part of our personalized learning plan. So we've included that within here. However, if you notice, Each goal has its own book. Now, those are books that we've included that we will pay for because we've asked for that as part of our budget. And so if you were to create another goal, we're asking that you also select a book. You can choose your own, but it will not be necessarily paid for because we didn't include that as part of the grant money, if that makes sense. With these, we've also got things, for example, the very first one was like project-based learning. We had attend a PBL 101. If you attended a PBL 101 last year, then you've already done that and you're not going to have to attend a PBL 1 twice. Observe a teacher that is using PBL or inquiry-based using the iWalkthrough platform. We already have to use the iWalkthrough platform. We were trying to double up or double dip on that. Create 2 PBL or inquiry-based learning units. If you're trying to use PBL, that was 1 per semester or something along those lines. And then for providing an opportunity for an exhibition night for students to share. I mean, that is usually typically part of a PBL as well. But if you look through these, all of them have components of things that we're already doing, so it wasn't a huge stretch. Also on that note, I'm going to go ahead and let you know that we have a PD calendar for the year. What we have included, though, is the first semester, and that is on our Google Drive. And there's a couple ways to find that. When we get ready to leave, I will send out an email, so you'll have the link. If you go to the top right corner of that Google Drive, it says Save to My Drive, so you can do that. Another way is to save the email. Or, if you want to as well, it's on Mr. Reynolds, we have that OneNote, and it says PL Resources at the bottom of the OneNote. So that's another way to get there if you needed to. I did not print this out for one reason. Dr. Colley and I said that, there things change. The county has continued to give us requirements and things that we have to go in and do. So we've had to add some things. But we've really tried to be strategic with this. We've really tried to take into consideration the fact that there's things that they're adding, and we're trying to fit them into ways that will not add a further burden onto you as much as possible. So we really did try. The cultural proficiency, which Ms. Gugino will talk about in a minute, we've tried to add that into some of our either department days or some other places, so in PL days, so that it wasn't an additional piece. And then the FIT module, which she'll also talk about, is something that is from the state and that the county is wanting the county schools to go through, not just cohort, but the county schools. Some of you have done FIP. Anybody raise a hand done FIP? I know Ms. Hirsch has. So we've got several that have done that. Ms. Wilkins, I don't believe, is in here right now. She's coming? Okay. She actually went with our administrators, and the reports and everything have been great. She said, Module 1 was a little bit long, but she said after that, she said it made so much sense for the other modules. So if you get a chance and you want to ask her about what she thought and what was really helpful with it, she can help it. FIP is Formative Instructional Practice. So we've put that towards the end of this semester, so it wasn't completely overlapping with the cultural proficiency. And then the book study, we put the book study towards second semester. So we really tried to break things up. TOSAs also have to come in this year as part of the county initiative. That wasn't something that we had a lot of choice in. So we stuck the TOSAs into department meetings so that they were not coming in on an additional day. And we also do not have a technology day. So we tried to make sure that, for example, with Sharita Leonard, this one we couldn't get anything else. She just had the days that she was able to come. So we weren't able to change those. But as much as possible, we've tried to stick the trainings like Odyssey-ware and other things into our department days so that we're not adding additional days. We really did try. So if you need the calendar, please just know that if you print it off, it could change depending upon if things happen, but we'll try to let you know that. All right? And
all right, so talking about FIP training, it is six modules, five modules, and I've heard only good things. I've not heard anybody come back and say, that was a waste of my time. People that typically go poo-poo on stuff loved it. So I'm telling you that it's going to be worth our time, and it blends in really well with where we're going and how to get kids on board with and know what they know very well. Also, Miss, I think, Kimberly, didn't you have a survey that you were going to send out? Is that going to be sent out tomorrow or in just a second? Okay, great. And the cultural proficiency is also modules, and it's in we'll get to that when it happens, but it'll be soon. I think I haven't gone through it yet either, so we'll be doing it together during PD days and on your own at some points. But that's about it. That's all I got right now. Everybody saturated? It's not raining outside though, is it? Yeah.
Kilo, Cassidy, service dog.
Here we go.
Hi. Kilo, Cassidy is Cassidy's service dog. He's a standard poodle that's been walking around with us. He just started coming yesterday, and so we're trying to get him together working as a team. She's been in her wheelchair all summer because she broke her leg, so he's used to walking by the wheelchair. Now we're getting them to walk as a team. So I don't know. He's here. And
you may or may not interact with him.
yeah, just as a standard, yeah, as a standard service dog, you're not supposed to pet him. A lot of kids are like, oh, the dog, and I'm like, say hi to Cassidy, instead of just the dog. So, but me or one of my pairs are always with her, so you should never see them alone. So, yeah. And if you do want to come and have some dog time, you're allowed to pet him in our room. But when he's out of the room, it's work time. But he does get love. And that was one question I had. I was like, do they ever get love? Because you think they're always working, because you're not supposed to pet them or anything. But the mom said that we're allowed to love on him in our room and make sure that he does, get love like a dog. So. Yeah.
All right. The last note, we've got to remember everybody's birthdays. So Clint Satterfield was August 1st. Michael Hope was August 4th. Trina Jones, August 10th. Noah Harrell, August 11th. Timberly Brayboy, August 12th. Let's see, Stephen Phillips was the 13th. Mr. Larry Rise is on the 19th. Heather Millers is on the 20th. Greg Shook's also on the 20th. You guys can party. Antoine Ford on the 28th, and Ashton Nash on the 30th. So happy birthday. I hope you had a great beginning of the third week. I started calling today Whack-A-Mole Wednesday, and it's only Tuesday. So there you go. Anybody else? Any other news or announcements? All right. Have a nice afternoon.